Sleep in heavenly peace.
Isaiah 11, 1 to 2, and verses 6 to 10. There shall come forth a rod from the stem of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and of fear of the Lord. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the viper's den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, who shall stand as a banner to the people. For the Gentiles shall seek him, and his resting place shall be glorious.
Well, it's December the 14th, and it's been a drizzly and miserable day. But we're here, and hopefully you're in the warmth of your own homes, perhaps with your Christmas tree lights on or other lights on, and it feels nice and cozy. And I just want to say thank you to Chris Owen for doing the reading for us today from Isaiah, and you'll have heard that just now. And so today's story is from the book of Isaiah, from the prophet, and it's called Roots and a Shoot. God's people continued to disobey him by worshipping idols. During this time, God spoke to his people through men called prophets. God gave the prophet a message, and the prophet gave that message to the people. Many of the prophets warned Israel about the right punishment or judgment that God would bring if they did not stop worshipping idols. The prophets urged God's sinful people to come back to him before it was too late. A man named Isaiah was one of God's prophets. He warned that God was going to use wicked foreign nations to punish his people for continuing to disobey him. Israel and Judah would be attacked by their enemies. Some of God's people would be carried away from their land to be slaves in a foreign nation, and others would die. Isaiah said that the nation of Israel was like God's beautiful vineyard, a field of grapevines that was going to be trampled and destroyed because of her sin. The prophets spoke messages that were sad and hard to hear. They reminded the people that God must punish sin because he's holy and perfectly good. But the prophets also spoke messages of hope, reminding God's people, because of his faithfulness and mercy, God would keep the promises he made to their fathers. God wasn't going to let the wicked nations get away with their sin either. God's punishment for these evil nations would be like an axe cutting down a forest of trees. Most of the forest would be destroyed, and very few trees would remain. Yet, in the midst of these promises of punishment, God gave Isaiah a message of great hope. The stump of one family tree in Judah would sprout a new shoot of life and grow again. King David's father was Jesse. God promised that a branch of new life was going to shoot up from the stump of Jesse and one day bear fruit. Isaiah wasn't actually talking about a stump and a branch. He was using these things as word pictures to help God's people understand that God would keep the promise he made to David. A king from the roots of David's family tree would sit on the throne forever. The final king, to sit on David's throne would have God's Spirit on him. He would love and obey perfectly. One day he would rule over the earth and bring total peace, making all things right and good again. People from every nation in the world would finally see God's glory and be brought together to live with him, safe from all their enemies. Now, the main point of this story is that God used foreign nations to punish his disobedient people, but he promised that a perfect king from David's family was coming to make all things right and sit on the throne forever. Jesus is that true king who came from Jesse and David's family. What word picture did the prophet use to help God's people understand that God would keep his promises? How do you think God's people felt when they heard about God's punishment for their sin? And finally, the prophet Isaiah tells us that our world won't be messed up forever. Why? And how does this give you hope? And so we're carrying on our stories from this Advent book, Tracing Glory. And you can look it up yourself, actually, if you want to go to 10ofthose.com. Or I think it might be 10ofthose.co.uk, the UK site anyway. And you can look at 10 of those and look for all manner of different types of books, easy books, children's books, a Bible. And if you want to ask any questions, please feel free to send us a message, and Tim or I would love to get back in touch with you and try and answer your questions as best we could. And until then, or until tomorrow when I see you again, I hope you have a nice evening, and keep warm and stay safe, and God willing, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.